Another thing that might keep your fingers dry is liquid chalk. I don't like using liquid chalk. I think it makes it too dry, and I also think that it wears out my skin quicker if I use liquid chalk. So I personally don't like liquid chalk, but that's for you to decide. I would encourage everyone to try it at least and see if they like it. I have found out that I don't like it.
Last month, I gave liquid chalk an honest try, and I found out that it's just not for everyone. As someone with pretty dry skin, I'm going to talk about why using this liquid chalk this past month was not great for my overall climbing performance and why I stopped using it after 2 or 3 weeks. I felt like the alcohol was slowing my skin healing too much, my fingers were just getting way too glassy, and I was actually dry firing way more than I usually do. I wasn't sure if this was a thing or not given that there's very limited discussion regarding liquid chalk, but I was able to gather some opinions from other people and also a climbing friend who's a dermatologist, and that info I will share. I also realized that a lot of viewers watching right now may have sweaty skin where liquid chalk has been known to be helpful, so I'll also reference a research paper to explain why liquid chalk formulations matter. That way you can choose a better formulation that will achieve dry, good performing skin without too much of the slow healing side effects. I hope this video will help you decide whether you should dabble into liquid chalk or not, and if you do, you'll be more informed of which products to look for and which products to avoid. Ultimately, I think the point of this video is just to start an open discussion about experiences with liquid chalk, so feel free to comment down below, and yeah, let's start the video. I've been wanting to try liquid chalk for quite a while now just because I've been seeing it around the gym, my friends have been using it, I've heard some pros endorse it, and overall I just wanted to see if it can help me perform better in any way. I needed to spend a little bit more to get free shipping on an online shoe order recently, and because Secret Stuff was on sale, I thought it'd be a good purchase. I use it pretty sparingly. I mainly use it as a base coat with powdered chalk over it, like the regular, just good old chalk. And throughout a whole session that lasts around 2 hours, I would recoat with liquid chalk about 4 to 5 times. During the first session, I actually really didn't notice a difference with the liquid chalk. It was honestly a session where I was still trying to get used to the feeling of it because it was quite different. But there was no real change in the performance, I'd say. It's probably because my skin is already pretty dry. I don't really worry too much about sweaty skin unless it's because my skin is thin from climbing multiple days in a row, but that actually doesn't happen too much. So overall, adding a drying agent to my skin probably didn't help too much the first day. I came back for a quick session 2 days later, and this time I did notice something. I felt as though the structure of the tips of my fingers had changed. The only way I can explain it is that it felt more supple or like gummy, and the tips felt softer and more tacky. So it actually was quite helpful during this day. There are some holds on the moonboard that I would consider pretty small, and sometimes I'm not very confident about holding them. But for some reason that day, my fingers felt very soft, and it would be so malleable that it would like conform to the shape of the hold in such a way that the grip was way better. And it was actually a pretty nice session. The sad thing is these positive results were actually short-lived. 2 days later, on the following Sunday, I had a max hang session where I was also using liquid chalk as a base layer under regular chalk. I noticed something different about this session though. Even though I had warmed up a lot and my fingers were pretty recruited, I felt as though I was slipping a little bit more than I should have. I noticed that the suppleness on my fingertips were not there anymore, and overall, because my fingers felt so slippery, my strength actually went down that day on my usual hangboard sessions, and my strength usually never goes down. Currently, I'm able to hang body weight plus an extra 80 pounds on the 15mm edge for around 7 to 8 seconds. But since my fingers felt so slippery that day, I only did sets of added 60 pounds, so that's a 20-pound decrease in my max hangs. I thought it was pretty weird how I was suddenly 20 pounds weaker in my max hangs, but I didn't really think too much after that. I didn't really make that correlation with how liquid chalk might have impacted that and how my fingers might have been more slippery because of the liquid chalk. It wasn't that clear to me until 3 days later when I had my next climbing session where I also moonboarded. And keep in mind that on this moonboard day, it has been 5 days since my last real climbing day, and it's been 3 days since my hangboard session. So of course, like in normal conditions where I would not use liquid chalk, my skin probably should have felt pretty good by now. There should be no sweaty skin or slippery fingertips, like all the skin should have healed back already. But on this day, it felt like my fingertips were still very slippery, and if not, it was actually worse than the day that I was hangboarding. Because my fingers felt so slippery, I was actually pretty unconfident on some of the holds because I thought I was just going to slip right off. they all felt very insecure. Even for the yellow crimps that are pretty positive, I felt like I was going to slip on them at any moment. Because I was dry firing a lot, I started to look at my hands and they looked a lot different from the time when I was just using regular solid chalk. It's hard to describe exactly, but the tips of my fingers were super glassy and the skin was more transparent at the fingertips compared to the skin around it. And because I didn't take a picture at that time, I'm going to include this picture from Kira Condi's Instagram. The fingertips on my hands looked like this color, while the rest of my hand were just the regular color. At that point in time, I've never had such discoloration in my fingertips, and that was when I started to put together how liquid chalk might have factored into this. It might have been some kind of compound in the liquid chalk that made my skin more sensitive, and because my fingertips received a lot of pressure when I climb on the moonboard, that must have caused like the change in the color. That session was just a bummer because I haven't done anything climbing related for the past 3 days, and even 3 days ago, that was just a quick hangboard session. It shouldn't have taken so much skin off or affected my skin that much. The last climbing day was 5 days ago, which if it was 5 days ago, my skin should have healed already if I was just using regular chalk. Even though I was having such a hard time on crimps that day, I did try some other problems with some bigger holds, some pinches, some slopers, and they actually felt okay. I was actually able to send one of the problems that I've been working on for quite a while, but because my fingers felt like they were just getting way too slippery and the majority of problems that I gravitate to are crimpy problems, I decided to stop liquid chalk that day. And after reflecting on this for a bit, I realized that the glassiness was kind of a combination of two things. It was almost as if the skin on my fingertips had barely healed at all from the last moonboard sessions 5 days ago, and it was very thin. And because the skin was so thin, it was more prone to letting sweat seep through and be moist and slippery. The only thing that I could have correlated this to was the slow healing of liquid chalk, because I've had climbing sessions back to back before using regular chalk and I've never had to worry about my skin at all. This was like the first time I've actually been scared that my skin was not healing, and I was so paranoid I went to Target to buy a file. I've never filed my fingers in my life. Like, I've been climbing for almost 3 years and I haven't felt the need to file. I just use a razor blade to like cut off the loose skin. That's it for my skin maintenance. But this was the first time I was actually worried about my skin, and I felt like my skin was too sensitive to the liquid chalk. I think my toxic trait is taking pictures and videos way too often, but it actually really helps when I illustrate points like this. So I decided to take some pictures of what my hands look like after I stopped using liquid chalk. This was after a good 2-hour session on the moonboard. My hands were very flaky, and this was after a week of not using liquid chalk. Honestly, after a week of not using it, I still felt like my hands still had some residual effects of the liquid chalk. If I were to not use liquid chalk, my hands would look like this after a 2-hour moonboard session. It would be not as flaky. So I feel like even after a whole week of not using liquid chalk, because your skin grows in layers, there were still some skin layers that were affected by it, and that's why my hands were quite flaky. After the session, I decided to razor off a lot of these flakes, and I decided to take like some pictures every single day to see how my skin was healing. So this was day 2, not much change really. By day 3, it actually looked pretty good. The only reason why I point this out is because I think when I was using liquid chalk, there was such a huge lag in my skin's healing time that even after not climbing for 4 to 5 days, the skin looked as if it had only healed for 2 days. The big takeaway is when I use regular chalk, I feel like I can have good sessions even if I climb multiple days in a row back to back. This is because my fingertips still heal well and they don't get super thin and glassy. And it has important implications, like if you go to a long weekend trip and you climb multiple days in a row, of course you would have to think twice if you want to use liquid chalk or not, because the skin just doesn't heal as well. And it might make having multiple sessions less enjoyable. After I went back to just using regular chalk for a week, my climbing pretty much went back to normal ever since. My grip felt normal again, and even that problem that I had such a hard time getting through those 2 crimpy holds, I was able to get through it without difficulty, and that problem actually went down pretty quickly after the next week. I didn't really feel like my hands were going to slip at all after I stopped using the liquid chalk, and I would say that I executed the problem in a much more unstable way than the other day when I was slipping a lot. I was able to really move my body more, be a little bit more unstable, and still feel secure on the handholds. I found this topic to be quite fascinating, so I posted on Instagram asking, So I recently started using Secret Stuff Liquid Chalk, the original formula. I kind of find it to slow down my skin healing, and my skin actually has been more thin and sweaty and slippery in between sessions. Is it only me, or is this a real thing? I want to be transparent, so I'm going to post all of the answers that I got. These were all of the answers, and the relevant ones were, I've heard the same thing. Next, it's got an antiperspirant in it, I'm pretty sure. Messes up my skin too. I feel like it makes your skin a little bit too dry, to be honest. I kind of get this response from most liquid chalks I've tried, so I moved back to powder. This comment was actually pretty interesting because he talks about Hooper, which is, if you don't know, Hooper's beta. So this is one of my friends that actually climbs with Hooper's beta a lot. So he says, Hooper has pretty dry skin already, so using liquid chalk can lead to splits. It really depends on your skin hydration. I'm a sweaty boy, so extra drying agents always help. So this comment is pretty interesting because you can't always discount the benefits of liquid chalk. There are some people who have really sweaty skin, and no matter the side effects that they may feel, the benefits of having the ability to have dry skin using liquid chalk really outweigh the side effects. So when the benefits really outweigh the risks, that is when liquid chalk is worth it. I was very surprised, but one of my friends who's a climber and also a board-certified dermatologist, she responded, I think liquid chalk is drying out your skin too much, which hurts healing and makes your skin glassy because you lose the suppleness. My skin is so dry even though I don't use liquid chalk, but essentially I think liquid chalk probably gives people what I normally have all the time. Same thing if you use too much anhydrous aluminum chloride. She also states, there's an optimum water content of the stratum corneum, which text says is around 10 to 30% for healing. Exogenous drying agents can affect the pH of your skin if it's too dry, which probably affects healing too, and other related things. What I got from all these comments is yes, alcohol-based liquid chalks can dry out your skin and it can affect how your skin functions and how it heals, but I was also wondering if there's any scientific studies on this. I did some searching around and found this paper that looked at the effects of different alcohol-based hand products on skin, and this paper talks about in vitro and in vivo studies. The alcohol types studied were ethanol, isopropanol, and N-propanol. And for over a 2-week period in the in vivo study, subjects had alcohol rubbed on their forearms 20 times a day or 100 times a day to mimic healthcare settings. There's a lot to talk about how they examined the skin, but I'll link it down below for more details. The salient points that I found from the study was that N-propanol and isopropanol produce significantly more skin redness compared to ethanol. Next, alcohols have the potential to inhibit stratum corneum enzyme activities, with ethanol being the least, then isopropanol, and the most at N-propanol. Next, ethanol in vivo resulted in less irritation compared to the other alcohols. Ethanol was shown to be the mildest alcohol tested clinically. Ethanol offers advantages over isopropanol and N-propanol. And lastly, isopropanol and N-propanol cause significant stratum corneum and keratinocyte perturbation in vitro together with damage to skin condition and function in vivo, whereas ethanol did not. As a result, ethanol-based sanitizers are better tolerated by skin, particularly in high-use settings than other alcohols. The main takeaway here is that if you decide to dabble into the realm of liquid chalk, say that you have very sweaty skin, the ingredients do matter. From the paper I listed above, the hardest alcohol on the hands are N-propanol, followed by isopropanol, followed by ethanol, which was shown to be pretty insignificant in terms of irritation compared to the control. FrictionLabs currently has 2 alcohol formulas. The original has isopropanol, and the new hygienic formula uses ethanol. Both will have the drying effect on your skin that people want, but ethanol will result in less irritation and less skin impairment. So logically, if you want better skin healing in between your sessions and thus giving you a better performance advantage, it would be better to choose the ethanol version. But that's for people with sweaty skin. For those with dry skin, because your skin is already so dry, the benefit of using liquid chalk might be so small that you're better off just using regular chalk. If you're still on the edge about it and you still want to try it out, there's a video on Tomoa Narasaki's channel where he recommends the alcohol-free version of liquid chalk, and the only reason why I mentioned this is because Tomoa specified that he had dry skin.
ノンアルタイプは乾燥手にいいです。で、アルコールタイプはヌメリテの人にすごく相性がいいと思います。はい。
So what can I conclude after my experience with liquid chalk, after asking other people and researching some things online? While liquid chalk has chemicals that can dry out your hand and help you perform better, the chemicals within it can also delay skin healing, making the texture of your skin less supple, more glassy, more slippery, all of which can also impact your climbing performance in between sessions. It all comes down to weighing the pros and cons. For people with sweaty hands, I'd say the pros of being able to eliminate the moisture outweigh the cons. But for people with already dry hands, it can be too drying, and powder chalk might be already enough. Although there's not much literature on this, I would guess that liquid chalk might impact skin healing in people with dry skin even more than people with sweaty skin, because you're essentially making something already dry drier. Whereas for people with sweaty skin, sweaty hands might already have better hydration and thus not feel the negative effects of alcohol that much. I would also guess that because alcohol-based climbing products may irritate your skin in some way or another, those who use it would have to be much more on top of their skin maintenance and moisturizing game compared to those who just use powder chalk alone. If there's anything that I want you to take away from this video, it's this. Even for those with sweaty skin, I wouldn't recommend isopropanol formulations of liquid chalk because formulations that use ethanol are less irritating, they don't impact your skin cell function as much, and thus are superior to isopropanol products. I know that Black Diamond, Evolve, and Dermatologist all offer ethanol versions of liquid chalk. Those I would say are the better options compared to the isopropanol products. Maybe in the future I'll experiment with the alcohol-free version of liquid chalk by FrictionLabs to see how different it is, but until then, that's it for this video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more.